All right, let's talk some Atlantic Sun. Great stuff. We always start off talking the major storylines. We do have a little bit of outgoing from last year, so I want to make sure you know the names of the 12 teams that this year will make up the Atlantic Sun Conference. I'm going to give them to you alphabetically. Austin P, number 1. Number 2, Bellarmine, who, by the way, is still not eligible for the NCAA tournament. They're in that transition period of 5 years, which I'm rolling my eyes at. If you're listening to me, you can't see me doing that. Number 3 is Central Arkansas, Eastern Kentucky, Florida Gulf Coast University, Jacksonville, Kennesaw State, Lipscomb, North Alabama, North Florida, Queens, who is also ineligible for the NCAA tournament, and Stetson. So there are 12 teams, but only 10 eligible for the NCAA tournament. So if you get a ASUN tournament championship final of Bellarmine and Queens, neither one of them are getting that automatic qualifying bid. I hate that and it stinks, but it is what it is. By the way, Queens, if you're unfamiliar with them, it's not Queens like the borough in New York. This is Queen like Charlotte is the Queen City. That's where Queens is. All right, there we go. So major storylines. Let me hit a couple of these for you. Number 1, there's a lot of talent coming back to this conference. A lot of times we look at things now with the transfer portal and we realize these mid-major conferences have been absolutely raided by some of the major conferences or others leaving. And that's just not the case for the ASUN this year. And I love it. And it's not because guys didn't have opportunities to go. They absolutely did, and they could have gone. Now, obviously, you're losing a couple of your main players because Liberty is off to Conference USA. We'll talk more about realignment stuff here in a minute. But Liberty was tied with Kennesaw State, as I said, for the regular season championship last year. And so you lose a couple of those guys. But listen to who's coming back. You get 3 of your 5 first-team players back, just 1 player from the second team, but you get 5 of the 6 third-team players back and 4 of the 5 all-freshman team players back from last year. That's great. So much returning talent. That is a major storyline of this year. But another major storyline of what that means for the ASUN is that this thing is wide open at the top. Liberty's gone. They've been, killing this conference. And so when I look at these rosters, when I look at who's coming back, when I look at who's coming in, there are lots of possibilities and lots of opportunities to teams to rise to the top. For me, and we'll say more about this in the tiers, I project those 2 teams at the tip top to be Eastern Kentucky and Florida Gulf Coast. That's just what I see right now. But there are no guarantees in this thing. That's just part of all this, so much returning, but also some comings and goings. So we'll keep tabs on that. As for last year, let me refresh you on what all happened. I already said Kennesaw State and Liberty tied for the regular season, but man, they kind of separated themselves. They were 3 games ahead of third place in the loss column. And then Kennesaw State got the 1 seed because they had beaten Liberty head to head. In the conference tournament, that's the same thing that happened. Kennesaw State beats Liberty by 1 point. It was a crazy ending. Liberty hit a late 3 to tie it up. Kennesaw State makes a free throw to win. So Kennesaw State goes on to the NCAA tournament. They're a 14 seed, plays Xavier in the first round. Kennesaw State is one of 2 Owls in the tournament, the other being obviously FAU. But Kennesaw State narrowly loses to Xavier in this first round game. It was by 5 points in the final, but Kennesaw State had a 5-point halftime lead, and they still had a lead because it went back and forth a bit, but they had a lead with 2 minutes to go, but couldn't hold on to it, never scored again, and Xavier moves on. As a conference last year, the ASUN was 18th out of the 32 conferences, so we'll keep our eyes on that, but just shy of the midway point. In terms of where teams landed last year at KenPom, Liberty was significantly the highest team in the conference, 48. Obviously, as we said, they're gone. So will we have another team, not even just in the top 50, but like in the top 100? I don't know. We'll keep tabs on that. Kennesaw State was the next closest to Liberty, and they were 123. At the bottom end, you did have a couple bottom feeders last year. Central Arkansas was 333. Austin P was 324. Of those 2, I expect Austin P to take a bit of a jump this year, although unfortunately, Central Arkansas, I think you're still going to be down near the bottom. I'm so terribly sorry about that. As for, let's talk a little bit about realignment and then some coaching things. Realignment-wise, Liberty, as we've been talking about, they're gone. They're off to the CUSA, as is Jacksonville State. They're also going to Conference USA this year as well. And then next year, Kennesaw State is out to Conference USA. So the two teams that finished at the top last year will both be gone by this time next year. And I can't blame Conference USA. They got to do something to replace those 6 teams that went off to the American Athletic Conference. And so keep eyes on that. Now, even with Kennesaw State leaving, West Georgia comes in next year. So the ASUN will still be sitting at 12 teams for the 24-25 season. As for the coaching carousel, what's going on there? Well, we only have 2 head coaching changes. One is actually at Austin Peay, who we just mentioned a minute ago. That's Corey Gibson coming in to be the head coach. Pretty cool stuff. Austin Peay's his alma mater. I always love to see guys getting to come back and do that. He comes over after 1 year as the head coach at Northwestern State, brought a couple players with him, in fact. And something I love is reading Corey Gibson's bio. He's from Sikeston, Missouri, which isn't too terribly far from me, but is the home of one of Lambert's restaurant, the home of the Throwed Rolls. Anybody ever been there? There's one very close to me in Springfield, Missouri. It's awesome. Check it out. Family style dining. You'll need 8 stomachs to survive. And then the other head coaching change is actually at Kennesaw State. Obviously, Amir Abdur-Rahim is off to South Florida. And so Kennesaw State brings in Antoine Petway, who comes after being an assistant at Alabama since 2013. If that sounds like a common refrain, like, man, I feel like I've heard of multiple Alabama assistants taking head jobs this year. That's because they have. There are 3 Alabama assistants, which last year would have been their entirety of their assistants. You get 2 more starting this year. But last year, all 3 of their assistants are gone and are now head coaches. So Nate Oates has a lot of work to do there. In terms of the coaches who are the longest tenured, longest is Scott Davenport at Bellarmine, who's been there since 2005. And then the second longest is Matt Driscoll at North Florida. Everyone else, though, is a pretty recent, like 5 seasons or fewer at their school. 2018 is the next longest tenured of the head coaches in the ASUN conference. So there you go. Just some of the major storylines. Basically, the biggest one you need to know, there's a lot of talent coming back, and it's pretty wide open. This could be anybody's game, which we want to talk about. I want to give you my tiers of how I tier out the ASUN, give you my predictions for the first team. Oh, and I had to include a second team on this one because there's so many guys coming back, plus the rest of my award predictions and who I've got for conference champions. All of that coming up in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by Jace Medical. I don't know about you, but life is really busy, and it's hard for me to find time to go to the doctor for the antibiotics I need. I just don't have time to schedule appointments. Or, with everything going on right now, there's so many storms or supply chain issues or pandemics. You need to be prepared now more than ever. And everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during any of these unexpected moments. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for the emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping you have access to medicine in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure that you have that medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASEmedical.com. Doctor created, doctor recommended, Jace Medical. All right, here are my tiers for the ASUN conference. I've divided these 12 teams up into 4 tiers. I alluded to it earlier, but I've got a 2-team first tier this year, and it's EKU, who I feel the best about, and then Florida Gulf Coast as well, just slightly behind them. I just see EKU with what they're bringing back being the team that rises to the top. I guess I should say the cream that rises to the top. Tier 2, I got 4 schools in Tier 2, and that is Lipscomb, Stetson, Kennesaw State, hanging around still a little bit after last year. They lose some, but they're keeping it in Bellarmine, which gets back a ton of talent. Really excited to see them this year. My third tier is Austin Peay, North Alabama, and Queens. I think there's going to be some that might have Austin Peay higher than that. I would not. I like them right here. And then the bottom tier, with apologies, but again, sometimes it's right there. And it's these three teams at the bottom. For me, Jacksonville, North Florida, and as I said earlier, Central Arkansas. So we'll see if any of those teams can rise up out of the cellar and just make me look absolutely silly. I hope it happens because I always want teams to do better, but somebody's got to be down there, right? Okay. Now, let's look next at awards and predictions. As I said, there's just so many guys in this conference coming back that I think are going to have high level of production that I had to divide this thing into my top 2 teams for you. So, little extra juice on it. So let me give you first my first team, all ASUN. Number 1, Devontae Blanton from East Kentucky. He's a senior, 6'6" guard forward. Was on the first team last year. No reason to think that Devontae is not right back there this year. Next is Terrell Burden from Kennesaw State. Was on second team last year, 5'10" guard, looking to do incredible things again for the Owls. We're going to have to keep rolling through this pretty quick, so forgive me for kind of flying through these names. Would love to honor them longer, but we keep going. Next, third on the team is Jacob Ognazovic from Lipscomb. First team last year, 6'7" forward. He's a junior. Would like to see him maybe get out and be able to shoot a little more, but man, does great stuff. Next, Jalen Blackman from Stetson guard. He was on the first team last year. No reason to think, same thing we've said with a couple other of these guys, no reason to think he won't be back. This one is kind of my stretch, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. But it's a player who made the all-freshman team last year that I think is going to take a big jump this year, and that's North Alabama's Jakari Lane. 6 foot sophomore guard, 12.7 points a game last year. I really expect him to get up closer to 20 this year. So keep your eyes on Lane. Now, again, as I said, so many great players. I got to do 2 teams. So I'll just go through it fast. My second team, all ASUN, Cameron Hunter from Central Arkansas, was on the third team last year. Second player on this list, DeMarcus Sharp, Austin Peay. He's one of those guys that came over from Northwestern State and had 19.5 points last year and shot an obscene 54.7% from 3, albeit on just 53 attempts. But really interested to see what Sharp can do. Third, Garrett Tipton from Bellarmine was on the third team last year. Isaiah Thompson from FGCU, Dunk City, baby, third team last year. And then also AJ McKee from Queens, who was also on the third team last year. Remember, I said there's a lot of guys coming back that were on these teams. I mean, and there's others that I could give you that I didn't put here. Peter Suter from Bellarmine, Stephon Swenson, Stetson, Ben Johnson, Bellarmine, Tyshawn Comer, EKU. I mean, there's just a ton of talent in this conference. Make sure you're watching it. As for my player of the year, I'm going with Devontae Blanton from EKU. For me, I think he's going to be not only the best player in this conference, but I have him as the best pro prospect in this conference. It could very well be one of those things where you look at like, oh, that's why EKU was so good back in the 23-24 season. Remember Devontae Blanton was on that team? That's why. Like, it's the thing I like to do with like, man, why was that Lehigh team so good? Oh, yeah, this dude named CJ McCollum was on it, right? Like, it's that kind of thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we look back and Blanton's one of those kind of things. As for my transfer of the year, well, I said it earlier. I love this guy coming in to Austin Peay, and that's DeMarcus Sharp. Yes, kind of transferring. He's an up transfer from Northwestern State, but I think a lot of what he did is going to be able to translate to Austin Peay and really expect him to do some great things. So I have him as my transfer of the year. As for my final 2 awards, Coach of the Year and then handing out my conference championships, it's a sweep. For Coach of the Year, I've got EKU's A.W. Hamilton. It just makes sense. If EKU rises up and takes this championship, which I'm going to project them to do here in just a second, I just see Hamilton taking home that hardware because my conference champion, both regular season and conference tournament, EKU. And I know like I'm leaning heavy into that, but it's because I see it. There's so much that they have in the front court, so much that they have in the back court. It all comes together, and EKU is going dancing into March Madness 2024. Can't wait to see it happen. Friends, that's it for today's episode of Locked On College Basketball. So thank you so much for tuning in with us. Would love to hear your thoughts on Gonzaga, potentially to the Big 12. Would love to hear your thoughts on the ASUN. Where do you disagree? Where do you agree? Let me know how dumb you think I am or how brilliantly smart you think I am, because there's going to be both of you out there. You can make sure to follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnCBB. You can follow me on Twitter at Isaac Shade. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on audio and video format. Smash the like button if you're watching to let us know you're here, and we'd love to hear your comments again on the show. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.